So today we're looking at Buddha's Enlightenment on page 131. And this is a teaching offered by Shinru Suzuki on the 8th of December, Rohatsu. Rohatsu is when we remember the enlightenment of the Buddha in the Zen tradition. I'm very glad to be here on the day Buddha attained enlightenment under the Bo tree. When he attained enlightenment under the Bo tree, he said, "It is wonderful to see Buddha nature in everything and in each individual." What he meant was that when we practice Zazen, we have Buddha nature, and each of us is Buddha himself. By practice, he did not mean just to sit under the Bo tree or to sit in the cross-legged posture. It is true that this posture is the basic one or original way for us. But actually what Buddha meant was that mountains, trees, flowing water, flowers and plants, everything as it is the way Buddha is. It means everything is taking Buddha's activity, each thing in its own way. So there we have the traditional account of Buddha's enlightenment experience as he sits under the Bo tree and sees the morning star on the morning of the 8th day of the 12th month and realizes his great awakening that all things are originally enlightened, that all things have Buddha nature, that you have Buddha nature and I have Buddha nature. And this is quite a different message, that we are originally enlightened, to this idea, for example, of original sin, which we see elsewhere. No. We have original, compassionate, wise, enlightened nature. This is Buddha nature. And this is the great insight of Shakyamuni Buddha when he wakes up. And we remember this each Rohatsu in December. You could see it a bit like the main winter festival in the Zen tradition. It is really. So we see Shinru Suzuki remembering that moment here in this teaching, and that all things, flowers, trees, mountains, flowing streams, forests, rain, they all are participating in this Buddha nature. They are all part of Buddha, the great body of reality, the way things are. Because we mean Buddha in various senses within the Mahayana, of course, the Mahayana Buddhist traditions. We have the original historical Buddha who was born 2,500 years ago, the Nirmanakaya Shakyamuni Buddha, historical personality. Then we have the kind of transcendent body of Buddha, the Sambhogakaya, and this is the Buddha of dreams, the Buddha of visions, the Buddha not in that corporeal state, and then you also have the Dharmakaya, which is the body of Buddha as all things, containing all things, the body of reality, the body of the true body of Buddha, of all things that exist and do not exist, the Dharmakaya. And so the vision of everything having Buddha nature and everything being Buddha is related to this understanding of the Trikaya, the three bodies of Buddha, which we see in the Mahayana Buddhist schools. And this is what Shinru Suzuki is talking about today, as well as the Tathagata Garbha teachings, the idea that we all have Buddha nature, that all things are originally enlightened. And you see, he talks about flowers and trees, but you could easily talk about the things that we discriminate against, like trash heaps and rubbish and pollution, and all things actually, whether we like them or not, are part of this body of reality. Now, of course, bringing our compassionate nature and awakened nature to things, we bring an ethical approach, but that's another discussion for another time. But the way each thing exists is not to be understood by itself, okay? So it's part of this overall, breaking down of the subject-object dichotomy where it's me here, self here, and the external world out there. That it dissolves in this vision. There is no self in this sense. What we see or what we hear is just a part or a limited idea of what we actually are. So this is, in a way, Shinryu Suzuki is nodding towards the teaching of emptiness here, of sunyata. In other words, when we practice something such as Zazen, then there is Buddha's way or Buddha nature. So we manifest this truth in Zazen, through sitting Zazen. And when we ask what Buddha nature is, it vanishes. I love that. That's a great teaching there. When we ask what Buddha nature is, it vanishes. But when we just practice Zazen, we have full understanding of it. The only way to understand Buddha nature is just to practice Zazen, just to be here as we are. So what Buddha meant by Buddha nature was to be there as he was beyond the realm of consciousness. Now, in the earlier chapter in this book, Beyond Consciousness, Shinryu Suzuki did teach us about how this truth is beyond this intellectual containment, that we can't grasp and hold it in consciousness in the way that we can hold it, an intellectual idea. Therefore, it is beyond consciousness. Now, it may be partly approached through conscious activity and through scholarship and learning and study of sutras and discussion and Dharma talks like I'm giving here. It may be tentatively approached, but it is not really encountered. It is only encountered beyond consciousness in Zazen. So, as Shinryu Suzuki says, when we look for it, it vanishes. And Master Dogen, the great founder in the 13th century of Soto Zen, always is teaching that it is beyond intellectual grasping, this ultimate truth and ultimate reality, this awakened nature. It is beyond just the intellectual. So Shinryu Suzuki is offering the teaching here as well. Buddha nature is our original nature. We have it before we practice Zazen and before we acknowledge it in terms of consciousness. So in this sense, whatever we do is Buddha's activity. If you want to understand it, you cannot understand it. When you give up trying to understand it, true understanding is always there. So part of the problem that we have is our pursuit of the truth, that we are seeking with great motivation and grasping and desire to understand. And this seeking with a desire, a grasping desire to understand, is the blockage to understanding. So this normal approach of pursuing the truth will not work and must be abandoned or laid to rest. We do that in Zazen. If we want to understand it, you cannot understand it. When you give up trying to understand it in Zazen, true understanding is always there. Usually after Zazen I give a talk, but the reason people come is not just to listen to my talk, but to practice Zazen. And in this section, it's quite a short chapter today, in this section Shinryu Suzuki is just emphasizing again the central thing that we do in Buddhism and in the Zen way, which is to sit Zazen. Listening to Shinryu Suzuki or Dogen, or even listening to my little talks here that I'm giving, they may be helpful and I hope they are in some way, but they are not the point. The point is you must sit. You must sit Zazen. You must find a Sangha. You must find a teacher, an authentic teacher, and sit Zazen and make it part of your life. This is the point. Reading 100,000 books is not the point. To practice is the point. The reason I talk is to encourage you to practice Zazen in Buddha's way. That's the reason any Zen teacher talks, is only to encourage you to practice Zazen. So we say that although you have Buddha nature, if you are under the idea of doing or not doing Zazen, or if you cannot admit that you are Buddha, then you understand neither Buddha nature nor Zazen. So the point is to practice. Right. Wherever we go, we should not lose this way of life. That is called being Buddha. Being Buddha. Wherever you go, you should be the master of your surroundings. This means you should not lose your way. Now, this being the boss or being the master of your surroundings, I think, could be problematic language, and that it could be misunderstood. Maybe you could say being at home in your surroundings, being at one with your surroundings, rather than mastering them. Because to master is to have this grasping, dominating mind, which will lead you entirely in the wrong direction. Maybe this is a thing about, maybe this stems from the fact that Shinryu Suzuki is actually teaching in a second language, English. His mother tongue is, of course, Japanese. So maybe the wrong impression could be given in this section here. Without trying to be Buddha, you are Buddha. This is how we attain enlightenment. To attain enlightenment is to be always with Buddha. Yeah. So we can have a great insight or awakening and then move away from that again. So being always with Buddha in each moment is the enlightened state. By repeating the same thing over and over, we acquire this kind of understanding. But if you lose this point and take pride in your attainment or become discouraged because of your idealistic effort, your practice will be confined by a thick wall. So, again, in an earlier chapter, Shinryu Suzuki was talking about having an ideal of enlightenment. And this has to be given up. It's a blockage to awakening. And this is something we just have to do again and again. We return again and again to Zazen. It is an endless path, a beginningless and endless path. So it is not that we attain perfect enlightenment, job done, and then we can move on to something else. No, this is a constant practice. That's why we call it a practice. It's not something we learn, it is a practice that we do. We participate in our awakened nature through Zazen, through practicing Zazen. And although we have this awakened nature to begin with, we don't gain anything in awakening. We don't win something. We realize something. We realize what we had already. So then why do we practice? Well, as Master Dogen found in the Genjo Koan, as he realizes at the end of his work, the Genjo Koan, although we have awakened nature all the time, it is latent and is not realized without practice. It is there in the background, but it doesn't wake up without practicing Buddhism, without practicing Zazen. So when Zazen time comes, just to get up, to go and sit with your teacher and to talk to him and listen to him and then go home, all these procedures are our practice. In this way, without any idea of attainment, you are always Buddha. So we have to give up this idea of attainment, as I was saying. This is the true practice of Zazen. Then you may understand the true meaning of Buddha's first statement, which he says on the morning of his enlightenment, when he sees the morning star. See Buddha nature in various things and in every one of us. So, Buddha nature is in all things and in every one of us, in you and in me. We leave Shinryu Suzuki there. Indeed, that was his last chapter. We only have the epilogue to discuss, and then we are finished our journey with Shinru Suzuki. So thank you for being with me, and thank you for your practice. And next time we will finish this journey with Shinru Suzuki's epilogue from Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind. Have a wonderful life. Thank you so much.